Hi, I'm Perry Collins. I'm the Copyright and Open Education Librarian at the University of Florida, and I'm here to tell you about our project, Valentine Remix, Joy and Critical Making in OER. So for many librarians, one of the most common questions we get from students and from their instructors is just, can I use this? Especially as our students are undertaking public-facing projects from digital exhibits to portfolios to co-created textbooks, they're seeking out media as a focal point for interpretation that will add context and enhance user experience for their audience. In many cases, these questions are an entry point for us to discuss fair use or to really get into the weeds of open attribution licensing. But just as often, the public domain represents this trove of material, old and new, that students can draw on with really minimal legal risk or anxiety once they know what they're looking for. In the United States, this includes not only older published materials from the 1920s and earlier, but also mid-century creations without copyright renewals, ephemera without copyright notices from before the 1970s, and newer media from the federal government as well. So for some of us, deciding what is or isn't protected by copyright is this fascinating puzzle, a labyrinth we can really sink into. But for many of our students, this might seem really tedious or simply confusing when they're faced with millions of online images and other works. So we're left with a central guiding question. How do we make learning about copyright and the public domain engaging, friendly, and memorable? So in late 2019, I joined with UF's instructional and outreach librarian Lisa Campbell and scholarly publishing and repository librarian Chelsea Johnston to develop a 2-hour workshop with the goal of entertaining our students while also offering some simple lessons around copyright in the public domain. So our students, along with quite a few of our creative library colleagues, gathered in a common area of our humanities and social sciences library. Here we laid out paper cutouts and stickers, many of them featuring public domain images depicting love or friendship, along with things like quotes from out of copyright texts and other decorative extras. So for students who were on the go and didn't have time to actually sit down and make a Valentine's Day card out of all these materials, we also created pre-printed postcards. And we ended up mailing about 50 of these cards to students' friends and loved ones. Throughout the workshop, we as library employees chatted informally with the students who came about copyright and the public domain, asking them some questions about where had they actually encountered this term? Was this something they had discussed in their courses or in their hobbies? And we made sure everyone received a bookmark with some helpful tips for using digital content in legal and ethical ways. My colleague Lisa also described her experience and how the project contributed to development of engaged pedagogy and active learning in the libraries.
As the instruction and outreach librarian, I was very excited to work on this project, which was an opportunity to create a fun learning experience outside of the classroom. To explore a critical aspect of information literacy, we were focusing on the frame, information has value. And in that frame, we want students to consider critical topics of copyright, public domain, open access, and fair use. And to do so, we used active learning strategies, which are an inclusive and constructivist approach to teaching and learning. Active learning methods encourages students to participate in their learning by thinking and discussing and questioning and creating. Active learning can help create a personal connection to the content for students, and it can increase their motivation to learn. Active learning also helps students build confidence through conversation with students, And so not only did the students have the opportunity to talk with the facilitators, but they were able to chat with their peers and really create a sense of community, which is an essential part of engaged pedagogy. According to Bell Hooks, engaged pedagogy establishes mutual relationships between teachers and students that nurtures the growth of both these, creating an atmosphere of trust and commitment that is always present when genuine learning happens. And this can be a challenging as a facilitator who is engaging with students for the first time. But by working alongside the students and having conversations, we were able to work towards this atmosphere and hopefully work towards genuine learning.
So it wasn't possible, of course, for everyone to gather together for another in person workshop during the pandemic in 2021. So I decided to transform the project into an open educational resource that anyone would be able to access and adapt, whether within libraries or not. The collection of images makes up the focus of the new website, which is built in Omeka S. But in this format, it's easier for us to retain context with links to the original source material and more information about why an item is in the public domain. So, for instance, our students might be able to pretty easily guess that a 1913 painting of a pink flower is out of copyright, but they might not realize this would also apply to a 2017 photo of two alligators where the creator has shared her work in the public domain. The site also includes more information on this topic than we could easily share during an informal workshop, along with digital valentines that we often tweeted ourselves and printables such as the bookmark that I mentioned. As scholars and practitioners such as Kim Kristen have noted, it's crucial that even as we share the possibilities of out of copyright materials, we also convey to students that the public domain is historically and culturally situated. So for Valentine Remix, this issue came up in two major ways. First, it was really important for us to be intentional in choosing our images, with the vast majority of digital public domain collections overrepresenting depictions of people who are presenting as white, cis, and heterosexual. While not all of our images include people, many feature hearts or animals or other decorative elements. We've also included images that show joyful relationships between people of color, same sex friendship and romance, and images from cultural traditions outside the United States and Europe. And this is something we really want to continue to develop in this and in other projects working around the public domain. The second question was how to help students begin to understand how to evaluate and reuse public domain materials in context beyond this particular workshop. So, for instance, students may encounter historical materials online that initially seem pretty innocuous, things like sheet music or postcards, but then they might find that they actually contain racist or misogynistic imagery. So even when materials are out of copyright, when must our students be thinking from an ethical perspective and employing visual and informational literacies to avoid causing harm by circulating these materials inappropriately or in decontextualized ways? Of course, engaging our students in conversations around the public domain at this level of depth in such an informal kind of setting is really nearly impossible. So, in my copyright librarian role, I'm currently working on several online modules based on this and related projects, thinking about how we can scaffold students' understanding of the public domain, working from the basics of copyright all the way toward a more robust set of tools and criteria for reusing visual material, especially in digital contexts.